Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
We see what's going on in Greece, we see what's going on in Spain, we see the devastating impact of austerity on these economies, on Europe overall, on Great Britain, and here at home we have a lot of talk about grand bargains and post-election compromises that would include potentially cuts to Social Security and Medicare. What can the Democratic Party and its leadership in the White House do to guarantee there isn't a replay of 2010 when the Republicans ran a hoax senior Bill of Rights and took a fairly technical detail about Medicare and claimed that the Democrats want to cut your Medicare and we never will and that sort of thing? Is there a way to take Social Security and Medicare off the table and austerity, make it clear that this president, this party, does not stand for austerity economics, and will that be done in time, in your opinion?
Well, absolutely. I think, and it's not just waiting to see what the administration will do. I think that there's been a number of demonstrations organized, actually, by the campaign with the yellow and black signs, keep your hands off my Social Security, keep your hands off my Medicare, that kind of thing. I think that is a role, absolutely, that the progressives can play and can win. I agree. I'm concerned, and I'm going to be talking about Simpson-Bowles. I was on the Bowles-Simpson Commission. I finally call it BS Commission.
Right. That's why they reversed the names.
Yeah,
I think.
Exactly. This embrace somehow that this is a great plan because it was somehow balanced. I'm going to talk about how imbalanced Bowles-Simpson really is and what effect it could have on Social Security and Medicare and why it's a bad idea. We are not impotent here. The young dreamers were not impotent.
Right.
They were helpful in getting a change and making sure that the administration moved. There's an understanding how important that constituency is, and besides, an understanding that it's the right thing to do. So I think that if we were to mobilize our opposition to Romney, who wants to get rid of Medicare, and show our support for those programs when we're supporting the president, that we can get leadership in the Democratic Party to back off of their embrace of some sort of grand bargain that would include cutting those essential programs.
You know better than anyone else what Simpson-Bowles really stands for, and you propose a deficit reduction plan that was much more in line with what the public really wants, to ask the wealthy to pay their fair share, to stay away from Social Security, to invest in the short term in creating jobs and then pivot. So you understand this problem.
But let me say something else. But you know what? You could also reduce the cost of Medicare if you had a public option.
Absolutely.
If Medicare could negotiate for lower drug prices, those costs of healthcare and Medicare would absolutely go down. So there are very sensible ways that we can actually cut government spending without jeopardizing the very people that government is there to serve.
I have a past life in health economics. I couldn't agree more. So now, but you have, and don't yell at me.
I'm not yelling.
Okay, all right. You have, at this point, as Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, last week saying that the 2013 presidential budget will be built around a Simpson-Bowles framework. You have a minority leader in the House of Representatives, great woman, Nancy Pelosi, saying she would vote for Simpson-Bowles today. So what can people do to change that?
Frankly, I do think that this idea of Simpson-Bowles framework is backing off a bit, because I think what they're saying to some extent is it has to be a combination of cuts and new revenues. And there are a number of positive things. Military cuts are in the Simpson-Bowles plan. Getting rid of some of these tax loopholes are in the Simpson-Bowles plan. So we can pick and choose some of the things that are there and say, well, it's all within the framework of Simpson-Bowles. But overall, the Simpson-Bowles proposal, the burden is really going to be, again, on middle class and those who aspire to it. And overall, the concrete proposals are not what we need.
Last question for you, because I know you have to prepare. The revenue portion of Simpson-Bowles, which has become the backbone or whatever, the framework for the discussion about revenue generation now, there seems to be this sense we have to get Republicans to agree to some form of revenue generation. The phrase tax increase has disappeared from the lexicon and been replaced by words like reform that suggest the closing of loopholes, but loopholes can sometimes mean the mortgage interest tax credit, the child care tax deduction, the employer health tax credits that could decimate what is already undernourished health care, weak benefits for people. So what do we do to shift the framework? And, by the way, all in Simpson-Bowles, as you well know, in the context of lowering the top marginal tax rate even further for the wealthy. So what do we do to say, whatever you call it, that we need to get back to talking about, if this country has made you prosperous, you should thank it. You should meet your... Instead of having people live in fear as they struggle to survive with one-third of homes under water, they're going to lose a mortgage deduction.
Right. There is incredible bipartisan support among people out there in the real world for asking the wealthy to pay more. The Occupy movement named it the 1% versus the 99%. But I do believe that the debate has been significantly changed by the Occupy movement from just an obsession with deficit reduction to an understanding that we cannot cut spending. We need to make those investments, and we need to tax the wealthiest Americans. And the president talks about that all the time, about fairness. So I do think we need to head off a grand bargain that might come before the election, fight all of this out after the election, after we win, keep our messaging clear. We are not going to pass anything significant before the election that is really good for increasing the middle class, restoring the middle class. And so I think it would be a serious mistake for us to think that we could do that and in some way help ourselves in the November 6th election. And actually, probably the Tea Party will help make that impossible as well. They don't want to compromise at all.
No, that's absolutely true. So your message then in conclusion for, let's say, the economic progressives emulate what the movement did for the DREAM Act and combine support with pressure to make sure that we elect a president who knows he has a mandate to do the right thing, as he did with the DREAM Act, and or at least with this portion of it. Would that be your message?
That is my message, that right here at this conference, we have every element that we need, the kind of leadership, the organizational structure, in order to win these elections. We should be looking post-election on what are the things that we need to improve, what are our strategies going to be, but in the meantime, I think we can have a lot of fun this summer, just going after the Republicans who are so incredibly out of step with the American people, and then we regroup right after the election, or we're already organized after the election to move our agenda, our progressive agenda forward.
Representative Jan Schakowsky, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.